Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today's guest is somebody that I've had the pleasure of getting to know virtually over the past couple of years. A practitioner of the skilled trades, a believer in blue is the new white, and truly an asset to the industry as a whole. As you might have heard him on his own podcast, Straight Outta Crumpton, Mr. Greg Crumpton finally gets his spot on the guest list for Blue is the New White and shares his incredible story with us. He grew up in the trades and used his knowledge and experience to continue learning, build everlasting relationships, grow and sell a company, and now provide support for other owners in the industry through the company that bought his. Strap in and get ready for tons of perspective, advice, and nuggets of wisdom from somebody who has spent his entire life in the blue-collar trades and found his version of success right where he always knew to look. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Greg Crumpton. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today I've got a guest on. I've been a guest on his show a couple of times now, but finally, he is a guest on mine, the infamous Greg Crumpton. Welcome to the show, man.
Josh, that way too much infamous. I don't know about that, but no, I'm super excited to be with you. I love everything you're doing, Windy City wise, as well as the beautiful Blue is the New White. And I love the book. I love the concept, and really honored to get to hang out with you for a bit today. Thank you.
Likewise, Greg, and you know, our relationship started on LinkedIn, I think it was, and I've had the pleasure and opportunity of, you know, kind of going back and forth and getting to know you over the past year or so, year and a half now, and it's just an honor to have you on the show and for you to take the time out of your day to spend with me on this. So, for those of the audience that doesn't know who you are, which is probably one or two out of the several thousand. Why don't you go ahead and kind of give us your backstory, man, and tell us kind of where you came from, and let's talk about how you got to where you are today.
Well, Josh, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I was really fortunate in that my father was in the industry, and he worked for a company that was based in Atlanta called McKinney's Incorporated. Really good company, solid company, been around since, I want to say 1943. And they started as a freaking tire recapper for the military. And then the military needed refrigerators. So they started carrying refrigerators. So they get into the refrigeration business and all, so you go 30 years out, and my dad gets hired as the first startup technician for their commercial buildings. So 1969. So he worked for the Atlanta Gas Light Company doing, and this is when the utilities actually had, in-house service. And so he built a career doing service work. McKinney's hires him, and he goes into like employee number one in the service department. And then, fast forward 30 years, he's running the service department. And, I was not, unlike you, I was not a student. I was more of a delinquent. And the skilled trades were a natural for me because I grew up working with my dad. And every time we would have a school break or whatever, rather than going to the grandparents or the beach, I would go to work and learn how to braze at a very early age, learned how to change the oil in a vacuum pump. learned that 29.97 inches of mercury was like freaking awesome. So, I had these weird experiences as a kid, as opposed to going to grandma's and riding the pony. So as my education through public school went, and I've got a sister, mind you, who's like 4.0 plus for everything she's ever done. And we went to the same school. So here she is 3 years ahead of me. And then here comes this guy. And people are looking at me like, okay, are you adopted? Or, what the hell? Um, so anyway, I found a metal shop and really enjoyed learning about welding, brazing, metallurgy in general, and was lucky enough to get accepted into a co-op program with the local community college and the high school. So I could go to high school half a day and the community college half a day for the last 2 years of my high school career. So I graduated early from high school. I was 17. And I wanted to go into the air conditioning industry because I just got it, man. I mean, I could read now this is going to blow you away, a Simpson 260 analog meter, with a wiper blade. So I go through the apprenticeship program the first year as an auditor. I had to take a test the second year to validate my first year for credit. I was a youngster, so I graduated. It turned out as a journeyman when I was 21 years old through local union 72 in Atlanta. And then went on to teach at the apprenticeship program for a couple of years after I graduated. And, Josh, I think I was teaching because I was still learning. Like every time we have to present information, in your heart, you got to know it really, really well, or somebody's going to call BS on you. So it really helped me to be a teacher or an instructor, because it helped me get going at a whole unique. And I was talking to McCready today, and we talked about it earlier. We were talking about really digging deep, not making assumptions, not taking information for granted, but really digging in and knowing the facts about what we were doing. And I think I was doing that as a youngster to make sure I knew, what pi was and what monochlorodephluoromethane was, rather than assuming that it was R12.
Yeah, and that's a rarity too, right? For kids. I say kids that age, but I think that's something that you often learn over the course of your life, and because I guess there's just maybe not a whole lot of opportunities for somebody that young to teach what they know. I mean, there's always an opportunity to do that and take it upon yourself, but most people aren't taught to do that, which we could get into later if you want. But it's such an incredible tactic. I use the same thing every day. If I learn something, I have to repeat it, teach it to somebody else to really help me retain it. So I just want to point out, I think that's an important quality if you want to retain a lot of information. And I think it's rare at a young age to be able to have the understanding and the self-reflection to be able to know that.
Yeah. And as a youngster, I don't think you know that. You just know what comes in an innate way, and you just accelerate it. And then when you look back, you're like, damn, I was doing some stuff that probably wasn't normal, but helped a lot of youngsters, I think, because I was teaching my peers. It wasn't a 55-year-old guy who had been in the industry forever teaching a 25-year-old. It was a 25-year-old teaching a 21-year-old. And so I think that was relevant for the time. So anyway, not to get too strung out on the education aspect, but I worked for that company, and they're, as I said, a fine company to this day. But as I started to mature in the industry, I wasn't sure exactly, okay, is this the vein that I want to go into, like commercial service, rooftops, water source heat pumps. What else is out there? So I wound up going to work for York International right after they got, actually, right after they spun off from Borg Warner and they became York International. And I got to do a lot of really cool stuff on centrifugal chillers, on absorption chillers, on steam driven turbines at the Atlanta airport, just a freaking whole nother world that I had not explored. So I did that for, 2 or 3 years. And then I thought, okay, here's this thing coming called digital controls, DDC at the time, direct digital controls, versus the pneumatic controls that I had grown up on. So I went to work for a controls company, learned how to bend conduit, learned how to run cable, learned a bit about programming. But really, what made these systems that I understood vapor compression, I understood, thermodynamics, hydronics, heat exchange. But working for Sure Controls allowed me to really understand the precise measurement and the control of those devices. So I did that for about 2 or 3 years. Then I had the opportunity. This is such a weird story, Josh. I went to work for a company called Maxair, Maxair. And Max Hall was a guy who worked for McKinney's, and he left and started a new company. I did a lot of work for Max Hall. Max recruited me to be his employee number 3, and I started his service department. Okay, then fast forward 25 years. Service Logic, my current employer, we just bought Maxair. And so it was such a cool thing to see the full circle. And the owner of Maxair was employee number 6. He started as a college co-op. And Max hired him out of Georgia Tech to do mechanical drawings. His name is John Sterling, a dear friend of mine. He bought the company when Max passed away with an illness. And John was able to buy the company from Max's, widow, Linda. And John built the company. And when our company, Service Logic, was looking to make an acquisition in Atlanta, it was a natural fit for me to say, hey, look at Maxair. And, lo and behold, 300 employees later, we own that company. So, so that brings us up to, I don't know, 19 something. And then I started Airtight Mechanical, my wife and I, in 1999. We ran that company until 2014. We sold that company to Service Logic, where I currently work. And those years, Josh, of running Airtight, and the relationships that we built over those years with customers, with vendors, with employees, with, I think about little kids sleeping under my desk because their mom had to come to work and the kid was sick, but they didn't have any more days. I mean, what a journey. And for me, those years were really, really solid. And I'm taking those years from 99 through 14, and now I'm trying to plow those back into Service Logic and helping our companies with a little bit of the finesse and the grace that I think we had, kind of keep that familial and that blue collar feel while we're a $1 billion corporation. So, ta-da! There you go, buddy. I know it. I took 22 minutes to do that, but
No,
I'm old.
that,
I'm old.
that's fantastic. I think that's a wonderful story. I've got a couple of questions for you on it. So, you said you wanted to be in HVAC. What led to the decision of you wanting to be in HVAC as opposed to, go the typical route in the college and the white collar, way? Was it just because of your dad being in it, or was there more to it than that?
I think that was huge. My dad being in the trade and me, brazing copper, still fossing copper before I was in the seventh grade. And I was not a natural student. I think I've evolved into a relatively intelligent person. At 50, I'm 57 now, 56, 57. But at 18 and 17, I wasn't anywhere close to that. But I knew that I could work like hell. And I enjoyed work. And I figured if I could work hard at the trade and learn the technical side, and then hopefully, and this is my immature brain thinking in a mature way, that my brain would evolve into something that could grasp the science. And luckily it worked out. But yeah, it was definitely, I love my dad. We had such a good rapport and we worked together. He was my dad, he was my boss, and he was one of my best friends. And to be able to combine that really was special.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. And you've read my book, so you know that I have a great relationship with my dad too. Although I never anticipated following in his footsteps into the skilled trades, I was following his other footsteps into Hollywood. And but
hence my stunt double.
Yes, your stunt double comment that made me laugh out loud. People were in the other office going, "What the hell is he laughing at?" No, but but no, it's amazing, and to have that type of relationship is fantastic. So it's fair to say then that that your parents were supportive of your career choice at the time.
No, that's not fair. No. So my mom was more studious than the rest of the crowd. So she thought that I should probably be a surgeon, a dentist, or something. And I remember telling her, like, Mom, you see this blue denim welding shirt I've got on? This is me. This is me. Yeah. It took a little bit of time. And I remember telling my dad, Josh, that he's like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "I want to go into trade, man. I want to go into the apprenticeship program." And he said, "I don't want you to. I want you to do better than I did. But in 5 years, if you can tell me that you made a good decision, then I will be so happy for you." So like 4 years go by and I get out of apprenticeship school and I'm teaching at the UA, and I go over to his house one day and he said, "Yeah, about that 5 year thing, I think we're good." I'm like, "Yeah." And it was really cool to see the acceptance and the endorsement, I guess, for lack of a better word, from my dad, that, he knew I got it. And he would send me on some really, really difficult jobs because he knew that I would figure out a way to figure it out, even if I didn't know it. And then my mom comes around, eventually, and realizes I'm not going to wear a white lab coat. And, but it worked out.
Out of curiosity, what did your sister end up going on to do?
So my sister has a doctorate in education.
Okay.
That's no joke.
No, that's awesome. And no wonder why your mom was like, "You need to be wearing a lab coat." Your sister paved the way for you.
So my sister and I have now, as adults, we have a good relationship, and we often laugh about those, the times where she was like, "I'm going to school, at night." She raised 3 kids and a husband in the process. And So she's like, how in the hell are you making more money at 22 years old than I'm making now? And I'm like, it's a long story, girl. But it's all, we do have some good laughs about that.
That's awesome. That's how remarkable. And so I'm curious about your time at Airtight Mechanical. Obviously, you were working for other people. You spent some time at York. You spent some time at this Max Air. You know, what led to the decision to go out on your own?
Customer service. You know, I remember being a young guy and a dear friend of mine who has just retired from McKinney's actually after 30 years of service. He reminded me of something a couple of years ago. We only, for whatever reason, we only talk on Christmas Eve. You know, like he's got a life and I've got a life and he's got kids and grandkids and all that. So, but I always call him on Christmas Eve because he's just that guy, you know. And so we were talking, and he said, "Do you remember many years ago?" And we were working. So the WAGA was the CBS affiliate in Atlanta, and we did a lot of work there because they had antiquated old mechanical system and then a new one, and we were always trying to keep the old one up to snuff. And we worked for a fellow named Gene Adams. Gene was our customer. He was the facilities guy. And Jeff Birch is this guy's name. He said, do you remember one day you and I were going to lunch and you walked up to Gene and said, now I was so young and stupid. I don't even know where this came from. And I said, hey, Gene, we're going to lunch. Be back in 30, 40 minutes. Could we bring you something? And Jeff, I remember Jeff. Now, Jeff's 10 years my senior because he served 8 years in the Navy prior to coming on board with us. I remember him looking at me like, have you lost your freaking mind? But I didn't get it at that moment. And Gene said, no, thank you anyway, but I'll see you when you get back. So I don't think anything about it, you know. I'm just trying to be nice and courteous and serve the customer. And so Jeff told me that a couple of years ago. And I said, well, what did you think about it? He said, I thought you were an idiot because I knew that neither one of us had any money. So he said, thank God Gene didn't want something for lunch. But Jeff uses that as a teaching point with his apprentices now to show how to build that bond with your customer rather than it just making it a transactional, like, hey, your air filters are dirty or you need to replace the bearing. But how are you doing? And can I bring you a sandwich? And, I think that for I don't know, maybe my maternal grandmother, my DNA came out, but it worked. And I remember doing that, a lot actually over the years of being a technician. And that's how I built trust and rapport with my customers, was not just taking care of their need from a mechanical standpoint, but how do we get one step beyond that? So I don't remember what the hell your question was, Josh, but
No, that answers it pretty good. I had asked you, why you went out on your own to start Airtight. Airtight Mechanical.
So customer service. So I was working in 1997 in Atlanta for McKinney's, running a nice book of business, had some really good customers. My dad passed away, and my mom, was struggling through, losing her mate of so many years. And my wife and I were a little bit restless, and there was an opportunity. So we go to Charlotte to kind of help McKinney's restart a fledgling office they had from a service standpoint. And so we get to Charlotte, and I immediately can tell that that city, I'm not in it right now, but that city was in need of a high quality mechanical company that could do more than repair contactors. And so after 9 months of working for my company, I was an equity owner in McKinney's. And, but I remember being so like struck and spoken to that you need to do this here with you and Connie. And so we in 1999, we started our company with the premise of serving high quality customers in the mostly critical facilities, data center, that kind of world that I kind of, evolve in or revolve in. And we just made a great little company and built, we had 40 employees when we sold. And we did a lot of cool stuff for a lot of people. And we put 14 people through tech school from getting out of high school into getting a degree in refrigeration or air conditioning. And so that's kind of a legacy that I always feel like we have of, we gave back and we educated and we taught and we brought people along. And, so many of those 40 plus people are so, germane to my life right now, not day-to-day work-wise, but I could call so many of them and say, hey, I'm driving to South Africa tomorrow. Will you join me? And a lot of them would say, hell yeah, because we just built that bond. And customers as well, I feel like we had those kind of customers that got it, that still have it. And so it was a total relational business where everybody did okay financially. Nobody killed the fatted calf, but we all lived to fight another day.
No, that's great. And I know that you and I have had our fair share of conversations about the relationships inside of this industry and just the wonderful people that you get to, meet and form bonds with, whether that be fellow technicians, people turning wrenches together, or other people within the organization, or like you said, customers. That's one of my favorite parts of the business. It's also one of the most challenging parts of the business as well. But the amount of growth and just, I don't know, overall benefit, I guess you could say, that comes from being able to forge these types of relationships, to me is, it's invaluable. Just look at what we're doing right now, right? 10 years ago, there wasn't a world in which we could do this, right. And form the type of relationship that we've been forming now for the last, year and a half. It's incredible. And I think it's a great reason for anybody to want to pursue this line of work, and really just a bright spot, in the industry as a whole, amongst all the other benefits that we talk about.
Yeah, the money and the health benefits, all that stuff are super important. I never want to discredit that, but the ability to grow as humans, and it, I don't want to be too cornball about this, but it really is special. I had a conversation earlier today with a guy who I've known for 30 years, and he was a guy who sold train chillers to me, and we replaced train chillers all over the country for Target stores back when Target bought a company in the Southeast called Richway, and they had these old McQuay units in them, McQuay chillers 063s. They ran like 4,000 gabillion RPM, and they hurt your ears. But we replaced a lot of those pieces of equipment, But the bonds that Brian Ranney is this guy's name, Ranney, the bonds that he and I built during that process remain today. I mean, we're still tight because of the times we had together, the times like when he shipped 3 chillers that I wasn't expecting, 270-ton air-cooled chillers that take up a 53 flatbed. And he said, "Hey, can you store these for me?" I'm like, "Buddy, come on." So, all those kind of little things build the relationship. And, you only know how good your relationship is when the shit hits the fan, because everybody can have a great day when everybody's having a great day. But, if I call you, Josh, on Sunday morning and say, "Hey, I'm really in a bad spot. I need to come crash at your house for a week." How does that sound to you? And do you try to figure out, I may not sleep at your house, but do you try to help me get somewhere? You know what I mean? It's like that personal thing above and beyond refrigeration.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's often those oddball situations that like you said, the relationship really blossoms, and that's why you're having these conversations 30 years later,
Right.
And it just is incredible. So moving on in your story a little bit, I'm curious, when you sold your business to Service Logic, at what point, I mean, what kept you in the business? What brought you then to Service Logic instead of just stepping back and saying, "Okay, I'm done"?
Yeah. So it was a decision, like you all get to that. We all get to that point of, regardless of your age or your financial, situation, or just am I worn out or not, you get to a point where, okay, what do I want to do next? And I feel like that. So we had been interviewed by 3 big names of consolidators, and I won't go into them, but you know who they are. They're still out there.
Uh-huh.
And those guys just did not feel right for my company. We were a niche company. We had a very defined market. We knew our customer base really, really well. We knew our profit margins on this kind of work versus this kind of work versus this kind of work. So we knew we had to find, if we were going to sell, we had to find an owner that would allow us to keep going down that vein and appreciate what we brought to the table, as opposed to, okay, how many rooftop units do you have under maintenance contract? Mm-hmm. So we met all the big guys, and super, super nice guys, had dinners, conversations, learned a lot. But it just did not feel right for us. And so my wife and I, so I guess 1998, we just said, you know what, let's just chill for a while. Let's just go a couple years and just see how it is. We're coming out of the .com bubble and all that stuff. And we did a lot of data center work, so our market was picking back up. And then a guy called me, a broker, and he said, "Hey, I know you're a weirdo," and which I appreciated. And I think I met some guys that you would like to meet. And it was the Service Logic executive team. And when I met those guys, it was just, and they're still all there, by the way. Now I call them boss. But we just kind of clicked. They got what I did. They knew I wasn't a cookie cutter guy. And, to this day, Tim Riedel, who is my boss, he's our president, he quotes me of saying, "I don't want to take the 4:30 a.m. Saturday morning call anymore. I'm tired of that. But I'm not tired of the industry." So I think that nugget with Tim, and then the fact that I love to educate young people, I love to, interact in our industry at large. They kind of said, okay, if you don't want to stay and be the president, now keep in mind that of the 35-ish companies that we own, 30 plus of those presidents are former owners. So we really appreciate and enjoy having our former owners running the company. But it just wasn't for me. I wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit bigger. But and I don't mean bigger as far as like title or whatever, but I mean bigger as far as industry input. So these cats allowed me to create my own job, and I'm able to help our companies in a technological way, a safety way, a critical facilities way, a thought leadership way, with a blue collar flavor. So I'm not the guy who's going to teach them how to increase their EBITDA by 4 points. I'm the guy that's going to teach them if they do X, Y, and Z, their EBITDA is going to go up 4 points. You know what I mean? You understand the nuance of that. And Service Logic allowed me to do that. I've been here for 6 years. I love working here. These people are freaking awesome. And I don't say that because I have to. They'll never hear this podcast, but they're just good people that allow me to project our industry in the right way.
Well, that's
that's
incredible.
why I stay, Josh.
No, and that makes a lot of sense, and that's incredible that you can even talk about a company that way. You know, I gotta ask. You know, when you were getting out of high school and you were doing this HVAC thing, you know, did you ever think, or was it ever a goal of yours to be where you are today, or did that change over the years? Did you ever think you were going to build a company up and then sell it off and then work for another company to help almost consult other owners? I mean, it seems kind of not planned, if you will.
So I would say half of it was planned. I knew when I worked for McKinney's, they had a whole lot of good practices, but I kept a black notebook in my front seat, and I wrote down stuff that made no damn sense to me. and remember, I worked for my dad at the time because he was a service manager. So not only would I hammer him on Sundays about these stupid things, but I kept the notebook. And my goal, and in fact, we named Airtight Mechanical Incorporated about 8 years before we actually went into business. So my wife and I, she's such a smart and savvy lady, knew that we were going to do something. When you're young and immature, you can't, just from a lack of reasoning, you don't know what that means other than you think you know a better way. So we would take my black notebook and what I was learning in the industry and try to make some projections about what we thought we could do. Did we ever think we would sell for multi-million dollars? Absolutely not. But we knew that we could deliver customer service at a level that we weren't seeing. And I think that was the crux of our, success. And to this day, I think that's what drives both of us. She's an interior decorator. You may hear my poodle barking. Sorry about that. And she has that same drive as do I. We want to perform for ourselves at a high level for whoever we're serving in whatever market.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. When's the last time you looked at the notebook, out of curiosity?
2015.
2015. You're about due.
I got a new notebook.
I ask because every once in a while I'll come across, when you're a service tech, you've got those notepads, right? You write everything down, That's how we did it when we were in the field. And
Yeah.
every once in a while, I'll come across one that's 10, 11 years old, and I'll just start flipping through this notebook, and the nostalgia is amazing, right? You look at this stuff that you wrote down, and you're thinking to yourself, number one, holy crap, was there ever a time that I didn't know this?
Right.
And I think it's just, it helps to appreciate where you are today when you can remember where you were yesterday, and the things that you forgot, right? Because you write them down so you can forget them. That's the whole point. And so it's just, I'm always curious about stuff like that.
No, I think that's a great point. And I mean, they just fit in your shirt pocket.
Yeah.
They were that little, you got them at a supply house. A lot of superheat readings, a lot of high pressure readings. But I think, and I say I got a new notebook because, and I was talking, as I said earlier, to McCready today, Gary McCready, HVAC know-it-all, about how we have evolved in our testing, in our data acquisition, and our whole thought process about a service call. And so the questions that I had in 1997 would not be germane to the conversation today. So I have to keep the notebook fresh by looking at where we are now and asking tomorrow's question today, because I know what I know. I know now what I didn't know yesterday, but I don't know today what I don't know tomorrow.
Yeah, that's an incredible point, and you're absolutely right, especially in this industry right now and the way that it's trending. It's amazing the advances, right, that have been made in this industry over just the last couple of years. Right. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I was in kitchens fixing fryers and ovens, and the same burner valve could be used on 1,600 different models. Now you walk into a kitchen and it's not like that. It's different. I mean, some of these things have Wi-Fi now, and you're like,
right,
what is going on? So
everything's a custom order.
Everything.
You can't go out to the truck and grab a gas valve. You got to order it overnight, and it'll be here at 10 in the morning.
That's absolutely right. And at the same time, we get a lot of people saying, well, why is your first time fixed rate not so great? Well, tell the manufacturers to stop making their parts specific. I don't know what you want me to say. I can't stock everything, but no, that's really interesting. And I love getting your take on the industry and what you see and what you value in the industry. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. Let's talk about, the benefits that you've seen on a personal level from your experience throughout, your career.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many hours do we have?
We could push it to 17, 18 hours. It's all right.
So I think more than anything, Josh, what I've learned is to appreciate the steps. What I knew, as a first year apprentice versus a third year apprentice versus a first year instructor versus a guy who started a service company when my boss gave me an American Express card and said, okay, make it happen. All the way through running, a company of 40 employees and many, many millions of dollars a year in revenue. What I've learned is to appreciate the steps. And when we're younger, I think we have a tendency to want everything to go really fast. It's like the year that you're 15, you can't wait till you're 16 where you can get a driver's permit. But that year seems like it takes like 20. But then once you hit 40, that 10 years to 50 seems like it happens overnight. So I think the challenge for what I would challenge people to think about is to make sure that you're appreciating and living through each season. And I've got a dear friend of mine, a mentor named Sam Froline, And Sam teaches me, or has taught me, and teaches others to think about life in 90-day increments. And if you do 4 quarters a year, and understand the season of those quarters, you can kind of slow the year down and really appreciate each phase of the year. And Sam's got a freaking doctorate in philosophy, so I won't go there because I'm sure he's confused by me. But he really challenges to appreciate the day, appreciate the month and the year and the season. And I think we, especially as entrepreneurs, can get caught up in that a bit. Where, like, I'm involved with 7 companies right now. And this weekend we have a prototype vehicle that we're working on that uses a really cool way of generating electricity. It's coming to Florida, and I'm going to get to see it this weekend. But I'm also thinking, okay, today's Tuesday, and I need to appreciate my time with Josh today, as opposed to getting too fast forward thinking about Jesse's buggy coming down for the weekend, because there's going to be time for that on Saturday, So take my time Friday afternoon at 5 to really dig in and talk about what is happening today, and not get so damn much in a hurry, like my natural tendency is to fast forward. And so I think that's one thing that I've learned through the years is appreciation of time, and making yourself slow down and putting it on the schedule, your calendar. And there was an article I read recently about Einstein and Steve Jobs both had the appreciation of no time, which means schedule time in your day, your life, your week for thinking, and not to have 9,000 damn phone calls coming in where you can't think, but schedule some blocks of time in your life to where you can actually think clearly about where you are, what you're doing, what's next, what sucks, what do I need to move away from? Because I think moving away from bad stuff is harder for people than they realize, because I think we all are eternal optimists in our heart, and we want to make something work. But if it's bleeding and its legs are falling off, no one to cut it off. And being able to have time to think clearly of, okay, this is at the end of its cycle, I got to move on, for me is important, because if I don't do that, I tend to drag it forward. So I think that critical thinking time is something that I've learned as well.
Such an awesome point. And I'd like to point out too that that's the first time I've gotten that answer on this podcast. And I think it's so important. The audience should be taking notes right now, because that is fantastic advice, and so true, especially with the way that you put it too. Having that appreciation for time and appreciation for the steps, and unless you have somebody sitting there telling you to do that, it's so easy to get lost in the day-to-day, right? To just take those phone calls, to keep putting out those fires, because that's what you think you have to do, and that's what your brain tricks you into thinking you have to do. And look, I'm not saying that, to avoid hard work or anything like that. That all comes with the territory, but there is a certain appreciation that you get from being able to take that step back and look at things in a new light. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's a certain school of thought about, making certain slots of your day available for firefighting. Is it from 9:30 to 11 and then 2 to 3:30? Those are your 2 hell zones, and you deal with whatever then. But, it's hard to start your morning out with a shitstorm and then create a normal day after that.
Yeah.
Now, we all do it because in the service business, you get that phone call, hey, your guy was here last night and now my kitchen's on fire, or I've got a water leak, or whatever, all that 8 o'clock phone call. But if you can work, and it requires a huge amount of discipline to adhere to your schedule and to schedule that time for doing those things. But if you can do it, and I've done it sporadically over the years, it does work. And, luckily, I say this now because I have a lot more flexibility, because I don't have 38 technicians out there running service calls. I'm supporting 38 companies that have 38 technicians, but that's not being a service manager. That being a service manager or customer service rep is an honor that a lot of people don't understand, of how much that position is valued for a company, because those folks take the brunt of our customers' pissed offism, their anger, their water leaks, their I'm cold, I'm hot, whatever. And, they do it with such grace and finesse over the years that we become to take those folks for granted. But, it's easy to sit here, 6 o'clock and talk on a podcast about how to keep your head. But when you got 9 people calling raising hell, it's a whole nother thing. I get that. I'm not Pollyanna in the fact that I don't understand that. But any sensibility that you can bring to your schedule will help everybody, especially your technicians and your customers.
Absolutely. It has the ability to cascade across the organization and externally as well. So, Greg, we've been talking for almost an hour already, which I can't believe. It feels like I've been talking to you for 5 minutes and known you my whole life. So I do have one more question for you, though, and I anticipate that we're going to do this more often because there's just so many more questions I have in my head that we just don't have time to cover right now. So I'm going to ask my infamous one, right? Just like you, infamous. I want to know, we've heard your story. We've kind of, I think the audience can really visualize, kind of how you got to where you are today. But a lot of what I talk about is how the skilled trades can allow you to live your definition of success, right? So, Greg, tell me, what is your definition of success?
Waking up every morning and doing what you want to do versus what you need to do. And I don't think that comes with a certain age or a certain place in life. It comes with getting to a place where you're happy. And, some people can hit that at 35, some people never get it. But if you can do, and it's so cliche, Josh, I even hate to say it, but, it's like the old saying, if you find the perfect job, you never have to work a day in your life. That's all bullshit, because some days they just suck, and they're not going to be great. You got to, I've replaced sewage ejection pumps. That was not a fun day, but in the overall course, if you can do what you like to do with people that you think and know appreciate what you do and allow you to serve the customer the right way, you're going to be in a whole heck of a lot better place. If you can't find that peace where you are, be patient and figure out what it is you want. Research where you want to be, and then work to grow into that spot. It doesn't, we get and I'm the world's worst to be able to offer advice on this, because I did move around a lot as a young guy because I wanted to find the kind of company that I wanted to work for. And I worked for that company, but I wanted to go to work for other companies to make sure that I knew what I wanted to do. And I think if you're patient, you stay centered to your values of what, and these things move. We're not static. our ideals change, our definition of success, happiness. Um, $100,000 at this point in life versus this point in life are different things. Your house payment, your car, do you have a car note? All those things are really come into play when you're making these calculations. But if you can find somewhere that aligns with what you believe and they believe in what you can do, then you can probably find peace there and figure out how to grow vertically within that company. Or if you can't, like, you start your own company. There's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur, but you always have to make sure to raise the double amount of money that you think you need. So if you think you can spin a company up for $100,000, get two. So I've never heard anybody as a startup saying, I'm flush with cash, I've got too much money. But
True.
It really comes down to happiness, doing what you enjoy. Some people want to have time off to work at the church more. Some people want to work 24/7 and make all the OT they can. You got to figure that out. But if you can find somewhere that you're happy doing it, and that your spouse, if you have one, is happy with you doing it, and your kids understand it, or if you're caring for somebody else, you just got to make those life choices balance and not get out of whack. Because when you're out of whack, if you study the DISC profile, DISC, when we're out of whack versus our normal rhythm, that's measured as stress. And when you're stressed, you're not performing well, you're not making good decisions, and you're going to burn out. So you got to get to a happy place where you can work hard as you think is required for this situation, without burning out. And I think that's really key of finding that sweet spot. I know I rambled, but there you go.
No, there's a lot of fantastic insight in there, and I think that was an incredible answer. So, Greg, why don't you tell those who don't know you and those who want to connect with you where they can find you?
Well, I've tried to make it easy. So if you go to Greg Crumpton, GregCrumpton.com, you can hear podcasts, you can read my ramblings on the blog, you can see some of the wacky companies I'm involved with, from coffee through Service Logic through Atom Power, which is an awesome company, Ebullient Cooling. I mean, you name it. We've got a smorgasbord of fun stuff to poke around. But love to have you drop by. You can subscribe to the email as well, to the newsletter. But Josh, really appreciate you taking time and let me. I feel like I've talked for a freaking hour. You've said like 19 words. I wrote them all down. But really do appreciate the chance. I hope that we could use mechanisms like this to help recruit, attract, and retain people into the skilled trades, men, women, young, old, to come and join us in what we've proven to be a successful way to make a career and have a good life.
Absolutely agree, Greg. And likewise, thank you so much for spending your time with me today and getting to, share your story. And I hope we can do it again. I'll come on your podcast. You come on mine. We'll just go back and forth until we know everything about each other.
That'd be scary, but I look forward to it.
All right. Sounds good, Greg. Thanks again.
Thank you, brother.